Random House Audible presents Extreme Encounters. How it feels to be drowned in quicksand, shredded by piranhas, swept up in a tornado, and dozens of other unpleasant experiences. By Greg Emmanuel. Read for you by Henry Levya. Introduction. There are certain themes of which the interest is all-absorbing, but which are too entirely horrible for the purposes of legitimate fiction. Edgar Allan Poe, The Premature Burial, 1850. What was it like? Did it hurt? What could you see? And then what happened? These are the kinds of questions I've been asked since one fateful evening at the end of 2000, when an unexpected collision sent my '88 Ford Escort tumbling down New York Sawmill Parkway. It was easily the most horrific experience of my life. At the time of impact, my girlfriend Jessica and I were just outside of New York City, heading north to her parents' house in Connecticut. It was nearly 9 o'clock, on a clear, crisp fall evening, and the parkway's many serpentine twists lay before us. I turned up the volume on the radio, forcing myself to stay alert. Jessica was beginning to nod off in the passenger seat, and our 2-year-old cat Henry was dozing on her lap. The collision came out of nowhere. We were hit hard from behind and our car went airborne. Following the thunderous impact, there was an eerie silence as we lost all notions of time and space. Then suddenly, we smashed into the ground and rolled in a deafening symphony of twisted metal and broken glass. The car went around and around at least 3 times. We landed upside down on the other side of the highway, now facing oncoming traffic and a number of very skillful drivers who managed to avoid us. When you're in a serious accident, the ordinary passing of seconds seems to feel like an eternity. There was nothing to do but wait for the end, whatever the end would be. Eventually, our vehicle slowed to a stop. Jessica managed to tell me she was okay. Miraculously, I felt like I was okay, too. I remember trying to wiggle my toes. I figured if I could wiggle my toes, then I couldn't possibly be paralyzed. But then I realized my hand was sitting in a pool of blood. And as soon as I saw the blood, I felt the pain. Searing and hot. Since that night, I've been asked about the accident many times. People who hear the tale exhibit a wide range of responses. Everything from shock and anxiety to repulsion and relief. Most people also ask about Henry the cat, who must have jumped out of one of the windows during the crash. Remarkably, he was found safe and sound another 15 days later. A saga for a different book. The more I've told this story, the more I realize that people find these kinds of horror stories fascinating, or all-absorbing, as Poe puts it. And why not? When I describe my car accident, or when a journalist like John Krakauer describes a disastrous expedition to the top of Mount Everest, or Sebastian Junger recounts a savage nor'easter that overwhelms a small fishing boat, the reader can share vicariously in the experience without any risk of dying, bleeding, freezing, drowning, or even breaking a sweat. We can experience the heights and depths of the human experience without ever putting ourselves seriously at risk. Now, if that's your idea of a good time, you're listening to the right program. Perhaps the accident gave me an unhealthy fascination with my own mortality. I'll admit that I became more curious about life-or-death situations. How much worse would my accident have been, for example, if I'd been driving in a NASCAR rally instead of on the Sawmill Parkway? Jump to the chapter entitled Shake, Rattle, and Roll Over if you need to know immediately. What would it have been like to be revived by a defibrillator? That info can be found in the chapter entitled Kiss of the Defibrillator. From there, a slightly overactive imagination took over. I wondered how it would feel to be stranded in a desert, to skydive, to go without sleep for 96 hours, to sail over Niagara Falls in a barrel. And the outline of this audio slowly began to take shape. Researching extreme encounters led me to some very unusual sources. My librarian probably contemplated calling the police after I borrowed books with titles like History of Torture, How We Die, and White Death, all in the same visit. I interviewed people as disparate as a trauma doctor, a woman struck by lightning, and a skydiving instructor. And over the course of these conversations, I learned a number of fascinating facts. A piranha can go from open mouth to clenched teeth in less than 5 milliseconds. A proper hanging will kill a person by snapping the spine, not by cutting off the air supply. A .22 slug will bounce around the inside of the human body like a pinball. And if you're ever caught in an avalanche, a few drops of saliva can save your life. The extreme encounters in this audio are divided into 6 different sections. Part 1 describes encounters with a number of different animals, from tiny fire ants to a massive grizzly bear. Part 2 covers a wide range of outdoor scenarios, like tornadoes, quicksand, avalanches, and frostbite. Part 3 features medical emergencies of all different kinds, including the always underestimated kidney stone, which can be as tiny as a tomato seed, but still wreak incredible havoc on your urinary system. Part 4 is devoted to crime and punishment. Yes, there really was such a thing called the Chinese water torture, but it was invented in 16th century Italy by a lawyer named Hippolytus de Marcellus. Part 5 describes a number of common accidents and everyday mishaps. And I really do mean everyday. Statistics show that someone somewhere in the United States will be struck by lightning before today is over. Part 6 is called Going to Extremes, and concerns situations that many people will voluntarily participate in, like going 9 rounds with a heavyweight boxer, for example, or jumping out of an airplane. But trust me, voluntary participation doesn't make these situations any less frightening. To achieve an even greater degree of verisimilitude, all of the tales in this audio have been written in the second person, so you chill to the numbing effects of frostbite. You hear the ear-splitting roar of a tornado, and you feel the stomach-lurching drop of an elevator freefall. This unusual narrative point of view is partly an homage to my favorite childhood books, the Choose Your Own Adventure series. But unlike those books, where your fate in the story depended on choices made by the reader, your fates in these stories have been predetermined by the author. And I should warn you, the outcomes are not always pleasant. But don't worry about it. Indulge your fantasies, satisfy your morbid curiosities, learn something, and have a little fun. Sorry, Edgar, but these directives sound like the point of legitimate fiction, at least to me. Yes, it is a jungle out there, and if you want to steel yourself against the very worst that can happen, the stories and extreme encounters are an excellent place to begin. Enjoy them in a place that's very comfortable and very safe. Part 1. When Animals Attack. Fire Ant Picnic. I was stung all up and down my legs, and I had welts all over them and on my side. They burned for days. I never had such an experience in all my life. Marion Bernhardt, 77, assaulted by fire ants in West Palm Beach, Florida, 1994. It's a beautiful summer afternoon under a clear Alabama sky, and you and your sister are driving into the countryside for a picnic. You park the car near a secluded pasture and then follow a trail along a river until you reach a sunny, grassy clearing. You unpack your lunch, arranging Tupperware containers, bottles of Evian, and a bag of cheddar wursts, your favorite, in the shade of a small hickory tree. Your sister realizes that you've left the bug spray in the car and decides to run back for it. After all, the woods are full of pesky critters. As she sets off, you lean back against the tree, enjoying the solitude and stretching out in the grass. Your left heel comes to rest against a small mound of dirt, probably the buried remains of someone else's picnic, you figure. But this innocuous-looking mound is actually home to 250,000 fire ants and their queen, who is busy producing 1,600 eggs per day. Forget what you've heard. Size really doesn't matter. Only as big as a pencil point, the tiny Solenopsis wagneri, or red imported fire ant, will wreak havoc and even kill. Indigenous to Brazil and Argentina, it is believed that these poisonous ants smuggled themselves into the United States around 1930 by hiding in cargo ships. Today, red imported fire ants live throughout the South and are rapidly spreading north and...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?